Okay, this is a tutorial on how to set up PFSense, and Windows 8 or any other Windows OS will work on Oracle VM Virtualbox Manager. So the first thing you want to do is make sure and download Virtualbox Manager on the handout that you've been given. Also, if you already have a Windows DVD, you can use that to install an instance of Windows, or in the handout there is a download to the uh, evaluation copy of Windows 8.1. So as soon as you run Oracle, the first time you want to go into the VirtualBox preferences area, go all the way over to the network side, and make sure you hit plus for the NAT and host networks, and then just leave everything as is once you do that. The NAT and the host networks. That's going to allow us to be able to use our network's internet access. Click OK. I've already installed PFSense and also Windows, but I wanted to run through the setup real quick on the PFSense side. On the handout goes through how to set it up, and so I'll just do it visually here to help as well. So you add a new instance of a virtual machine. We're going to name it PFSense. The settings for this is pretty basic. The one that you've got to pay attention to, though, is the network settings. The network settings has two adapters: a bridge adapter on an ENO, whatever your network adapter name is. Mine's ENO for Ethernet. And make sure it is set to Ethernet. Yours might not be ENO. It might be called something different. But ENO is going to be our WAN connection to get internet access. Everything else below advanced you leave alone. Adapter 2 needs to be internal network, and I named mine RVC, and then everything below advanced you leave alone. On the Windows, when you create that instance of a new virtual, the settings on that, on network, are just make sure and select the internal network, RVC, and it only needs one adapter. Everything under advanced stays the same. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead to the VirtualBox instance of VM PFSense. I'm going to do a fresh install here. I'm on my home router doing this right now, and so this is the IP address that the router gave the WAN address on VirtualBox for PFSense. This is a hard-coded IP address I typed in. But I'm going to go ahead and go down here to this area here where it says reset to factory defaults. So I can start this over again. In the handout it does show you about making sure and pressing the I for interactive once you install PFSense the very first time. Just follow those steps. What I'm doing here is, if say you wanted to redo the setup again, it does give you the option here to reset to factory default. The boot screen come up, hit enter. I'm going to hit 1 to boot, 1 enter. What it's doing is grabbing all the information on my VirtualBox machine, keyboard, USB, hard drive. Then it configures what network adapters I've configured. You'll notice on my screen here, EM0 and EM1 are valid interfaces. These are the two I added. The EM0 is going to be WAN, EM1 is going to be the LAN interface. It says, do you want to set up VLANs first? We do not. So go ahead and do N, enter. Enter the WAN interface. It's EM0, enter. Next is enter the LAN interface. That's EM1. The optional one, we're not going to do anything. Hit enter. So now it tells us the interface will be assigned WAN EM0 and LAN EM1. Do I want to proceed? Y, and then enter. It's now writing all these configurations back, and then after the configurations are done, it will give us a WAN and a LAN IP address. The WAN comes from my home router, and the IP address for LAN, it gives it a default LAN itself, and we're going to change that. So you'll notice here, it gave the WAN EMO of 172.168.1.115, and it has in there a Class C domain, and that was the 24. So this IP address comes from my router. I want it to stay as is, because that's where my internet's going to come from. The second one, though, is what PFSense gives, a default 192.168.1.1, which you normally have. For those of you who have set up Wi-Fi routers at home, that's the normal default Wi-Fi router IP address for most of your routers. So we're going to change that one to something different, a 10 dot number. In order to do that, we're going to select here the interface for IP address, number 2. So I'm going to type in number 2, hit enter. Available interfaces is 1 for WAN, 2 for LAN. We're going to do 2, enter. Now it asks me to enter in an IP address I want to change it to on the LAN. I'm going to do a 10.2.0.1. Hit enter. Subnet mask is 24, which is going to give me the 255.255.255.0 Class C. So 24 and then enter. Enter in the LAN gateway. Don't need one. Hit enter. And then IPv6 we don't need. Hit enter. Do I want to enable DHCP? N. I do not. Enter. So I'll disable DHCP. Do I want to revert to HTTP as a web configurator protocol? N. Enter. It's now saving the changes, reloading. It says you can now access web configurator from the Windows machine by typing in the 10.2.0.1, and that's how we'll access PFSense here in a second. It's 10.2.0.1 from the Windows machine. Hit enter and continue. Now we have the DHCP on WAN comes from my router, just to recap, and the EM1 I changed what PFSense gave me by default, which is a 192. And the reason for that is it would conflict most of your home routers if you left that as is. So you want to make sure and change that. And a 10.2.0.1 is a great one to use. So now I've done the PFSense side, I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to switch over to the Windows install. And I'm going to go to the network interface for Windows 8 here. I'm going to open my network sharing, change adapter settings, properties, yes. I'm going to scroll down to IPv4, hit properties, and here's where I'm going to hard code in my IP address that's going to match my router on PFSense. I'll pull this over here so you can see it. So my router on PFSense is 10.2.0.1. My IP address is my main IP address. I want that to fall in that same range for the IP address for the Windows machine. So I put in a 10.2.0.3, Class C, a 10.2.0.1, and then the DNS server I'm using, I typed in manually, is from my router, 192.168.1.254, and that you'd want to do the same. Whatever your router IP address is, that's the IP address you want to put here in the DNS so you can get internet on the Windows side. Once you've typed that all in, hit OK. let it render in Windows, and you should be able to right click on that NIC card and go to status and see that you have internet access. And I would test it now by typing in the IP address to PFSense 10.2.0.1. It will ask you to proceed because there's no digital certificate, so you'll get a warning in Chrome and Firefox. Proceed anyway. The default password, username password, is admin for username, and the default password for PFSense is PFSense. First prompt it asks you to go through is a wizard. This wizard will guide you through the initial configurations of PFSense. The wizard may be stopped at any time by clicking the logo above at the top. So we're going to go ahead and click Next. It gives a default host name of PFSense, domain, local domain. For host name, we're going to change that to whatever your last name is. We're going to leave domain your last name as well. Next. Change the time server. We're going to find America, Chicago. Next. This screen here, we're not going to need to change anything on, but I'll explain what's going on here. It basically configures your WAN address, which we have it configured via our router. And so it's going to grab everything it needs there. So we can go ahead and click Next. This is the LAN IP address that we've set manually, remember. And it's a subnet of 224, which is a class C, 255.255.255.0. Click Next. Last screen, you're going to change your password to something else, just so no one else can get into that from a web browser. Because the way it's set up, if this was set up on a server outside of Virtualbox, anyone could get into it if they knew the default username password. Click Next. Reload. This takes a few moments, so I'm going to pause the podcast and then come back. Okay, the wizard's complete. Now you got to go ahead and click on the click here to continue PFSense web configurator. You'll notice now it has the last name, which is the domain. It also gives you the platform PFSense, how many CPUs, how long you've been up and running, current date and time, DNS. Also on the right side will give you the interface information, the WAN address, and the LAN address both. And we're going to go ahead and go to the packages area, click on available packages, and sense this up over, make sure that we have internet connection first. Okay, that's good there. Let's go to our Virtualbox. Okay, we're going to reset the WAN here. It's set there a little bit and probably disconnected, so I'm going to reset the WAN to DHCP. I don't want DHCP for version 6. Now disabling and enabling, I want N for web configurator. It's now saving the WAN connection and relaunching the WAN connection with a DHCP. Now we should have a WAN connection available. Good. Let's go back to our Windows machine and see if we now have internet connection here. disable and enable. Alright, looks like it might have caught it this time. So we do have internet connection. Let's go ahead now, go back and test to make sure. We can now go to the systems area, packages, and here's where we're going to download some packages initially. I actually have that on the bottom of, I believe, your handout. And we're going to install Squid, Squid Guard, and Snort. So let's go ahead and go there real quick. Squid, Squid Guard, and Snort. So first of all, Squid, over here to the plus symbol. Yes, we do want to install this. It's going to download. While it's downloading and installing, you can go ahead and go to the other one. We want to do Squid. And this is our proxy filter for web filtering. And so we did the two. Squids. Now we're going to do Snort, which is going to help us to monitor network traffic and block, so we can block IP addresses. And we'll have another tutorial on Squid and PFSense later on. So I'm going to go ahead and find the Snort package. There it is. It's open source, network prevention, intrusion prevention and detection, combining benefits of signature protocol and anomaly-based injection. So I'm going to hit plus there. Click OK. It'll download Snort and install it. And once these are finished installing, we'll be able to see them from the services area. Will show us the installations of all the products. I think I jumped too fast in the first one. I have to reinstall that first package. You have to wait till the package installs all the way before leaving the tab. Okay, it's configuring it. Looking for latest updates and installing additional files. Installation complete. Now if we come up here, Snort's available. And let me see here. I have proxy filter is available, which is Squid Guard. The one I didn't download successfully, it looks like, is the first one, which was Squid. I'll reinstall this. A lot of K through 12s use PFSense to monitor traffic, block web traffic, and so it's a really good tool to utilize. Now if I go to services now, there's my proxy filter, proxy server. Proxy filter, I can block in, if I were a common ACL, if I find something I want to block directly, I can do so via category. If I go here to services and proxy server on access control, I can come down to say a blacklist or a banned host address. You can put an IP address as one on each line, it'll ban it. Whitelist will allow, and blacklist will not let the domain in. So if I wanted to blacklist, say google.com, and save that, go over my general tab. One thing you want to check on proxy to make sure and test it here is this transparency proxy. That way users don't have to configure, IT folks don't have to configure that in the web browser, it'll automatically do it for them. Click save. Now if I go to a new tab here, I'm in Windows side and try to type in Google, it will block Google. Access is denied from Squid. Now to see how that works, I'll go back to the access control, get rid of Google, save, try to access Google again, and it lets me in. So it's very quick, very dynamic, and one of the things we'll be doing on February 15th is as we see IP addresses come across our network, we can actually ban them in this area, in the access control area. We can ban IP addresses in the host address by entering IP address on each line, a new IP address, or blacklist entire domains here. That's probably the most popular tab for network admins to use because you can easily add or take away access control. The other thing this proxy server will let you do is enter in a blacklist of services that service that creates blacklists, so you don't have to manually type them in. That's in the proxy filter. You scroll down to the bottom, there's a blacklist URL, and basically you can find a lot of websites that give you an entire URL to put in here, and it will block all sites, like say for a whole school district, and you don't have to worry about updating anything on your end. The other service that we'll have a podcast for in a bit is the Snort. Snort basically will give you control over ability to search the network for certain items, like say for instance on the blocked area. Here you can actually block IP addresses. It'll show you what blocked hosts have been blocked. There is suppressed information as well. And basically on this one here, where it says download all blocked hosts will be saved here. Clear warning, all hosts will be removed. When you hit the download button, it says no content are in the Snort block list because we're not putting anything in there. If we go all the way back to the Snort interface, it says here click plus to add an interface, E icon to edit the interface, X to delete it. So if we hit the plus sign here, it gives us now what interface do we want to select, a WAN interface or LAN interface. WAN interface would be those on the internet wanting to go out to the internet. That's generally the one that you want to enable that. And then as you go on down, there's different settings like alerts to firewall system logs, blocking offenders will automatically block the host that generates a Snort alert. This one, kill state, will kill the firewall states for blocked IP address, and it's in both directions it will be blocked. And keep going down, there's a whole bunch of default settings I would suggest leaving alone. And then you can have an alert or an argument that automatically inserts into the Snort configuration. Okay, coming up here is a lot of different settings as far as what categories you want. It says here to go to the Updates tab to download the rules and configure it in globing. In the Global tab, there is an Update tab here that we can click on. right there. And we can update rules. And in order to do that, there has to be a few rules set up on this first. Well, this machine doesn't, since I just added it. So that's basically what I'll show you in the podcast, is how to set up the Snort interface. Okay, so that is PFSense set up also with your Windows machine to be able to talk and also to be able to configure. The upcoming tutorials are going to be on Snort and then also on the proxy server Squid.